just a habit. So this obstacle manifests differently in each of us. Some of us who have been going to Buddhist classes for a long time very easily become, this is just what I do on Monday nights. We've had nothing really bringing me here except the inertia from having come here time and time and time again. You haven't come to classes like this. Maybe even still, the motivation is not really clear for you. Maybe you just have to take the time to ask a question. Maybe it's just because somebody invited you. Because you like the way flying goes. Or you have a reason to say no. But the reason that we start each class with the motivation is that you can't get any more out of this class or out of any experience in general. More than the motivation of what you bring to it. So right now, take a moment and really spark up anew what brought you here tonight. Like my teacher says, be radically honest. Maybe you don't know. So even if you're not knowing, at least you're questioning. Yeah, it doesn't really matter the answer you come up with. It's more important that you stay in that investigation. Why am I here? Why am I doing this? What's my purpose? Take a few moments to investigate that for yourself. Not what you think it should look like, not what you think it's supposed to be. Why are you honestly here? Maybe you're having a hard time finding the intention. You can still work with that. Maybe your intention could be to find an intention, find reason. You're stuck here for the next 2 hours, so it's in your own best interest to find some way to make this useful. Otherwise, it's just wasting your precious time. You have some semblance, motivation or intention, just make that intention firm. You put it in a statement for yourself. I am here because X. I hope to achieve X. Spending 2 hours here. And make it clear in your mind. It's actually the only way that that group is going to be possible for you is by making that intention clear and convenient. It's not just going to happen to you. Out of the blue. have that kind of statement form in your mind, let it kind of sit in the back of your brain. That'll be the filter through which everything you experience happens here tonight. Filter through that statement so that you can squeeze out the things you hear tonight or anything that you feel or experience and use that towards that goal or that intention. That's fuel towards realizing that intention. You're ready. Just deepen your breath. Take your own time. Open your eyes. Great. So, for you guys who have been here, the subject matter for tonight, I mean, this whole course is really difficult and it seems abstract and can very easily seem disconnected from anything important in your life ever. So, setting intention tonight, especially, is super important because there's nothing I can say that's going to make this important and valuable for you. Right? It's actually kind of funny because it's kind of what we're dealing with, reality, right? Reality is not just something that's popping at you. It's what you bring to a situation or a context that makes it real. So in the same way with this teaching, if you can't bring any intention or motivation to be here or to learn something from it, it's going to be a waste for you. It's just going to seem abstract and like dumb facts and kind of completely disconnected from anything that you're dealing with. Now, converse, if you do bring an intention to it and have a really strong motivation to hear something that's going to be helpful for you, then it will work that way for you, right? And then that takes a lot of pressure off of me because I can say blah, 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 blah. And as long as you have a good intention, you'll get something out of it. So, So a few kind of, I guess, ground rules. Not rules, ground rules. I like to learn by asking a lot of questions. I'd be a hypocrite if I'd say, don't ask questions in my class. Right? You know, it's interesting because in the traditional monastery setting, the way that they would teach is you just get information dumped at you, right? They say they don't even give explanation, they just literally will, it's called giving the law. The teacher will read a text, and it just kind of washes over you, right? Now, what they have in the monastery that's a counterpart to that, though, is then the monks literally for several hours a day, you know, I think on like average 6 hours a day, and then during, you know, more rigorous study times or debate festivals, it's like 12 hours a day. They're sitting there all day, arguing back and forth and picking it apart, trying to figure out what it means, right? So they have this analytical component where they're not just getting, they're not being thrown information at them and then that's it. They're really given time to dissect it and work with it. And unfortunately, we don't really have, you know, we're not living in a monastery, so it's not this all-encompassing thing where we can do a teaching and then like everybody's going to spend 3 hours debating it. So my best sense of things is the way that we do this in the US is we ask questions and we kind of fold it into the teaching time. Right? So for me, it's I encourage asking questions. I encourage you, when something doesn't make sense, to ask about it. I encourage you to question me and take everything I say with a grain of salt. Try to prove me wrong. Because if you don't, it's just going to be another factoid and it's really not going to go very deep. If you really try to wrestle with it and try to pick it apart and get convinced by it through that process, then it'll be actually something valuable, right? That being said, there are logistical things too, right? So I might know that I'm going to cover something later, or that, you know, I might see honestly that we're kind of in a loop, and I might say you need to think about it for yourself a little bit. I might know something about time, so sometimes questions might be like, nah, you know, and that's nothing personal. That's nothing. That's not to demean your question. You know, I'm very sensitive about this because I've had in my experience a lot of ask questions and I felt like they weren't taken seriously. I always took that personally, and I found later that was a good question. This guy's talking about the same thing. And being up here, I realized how silly that was. Because don't take it personally, right? So I want you to reserve your questions. I honor your questions. I really support and I want you to wrestle with your questions. That being said, if we don't have time, whatever the context of the class, nothing personal, right? And I also wanted to say, you know, questions are important too, because I'm going to get a lot of stuff wrong in this class. I'm going to say something wrong. I'm going to answer a question incorrectly, and that's just the way it is. I'm fallible, right? The great thing is that presents a fantastic opportunity for you, because if you can't trust everything I say, then you really have to be prepared, right? If you could just believe everything I said, then you wouldn't have to do much work. But if you're questioning what I'm saying and wondering if it's true or not, then I can actually give you some clues. I had this professor who had a colleague who said, I'll never forget this. He said, you know, how did he say it? It's like it's really disappointing because I'm just too smart and I get everything too fast. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's just a way to give yourself a side-handed comment, but it really wasn't. He was really saying he gets concepts way too quickly, and because he understands it right at the face of it, he doesn't have to struggle with it to reconstruct it and learn something new from it. Right? It just immediately is clear to him, and then there's no process, and he doesn't learn anything. So that always really taught me to, like, what you get out of this is not the getting the idea, or how quickly you get the idea, or how immediate it makes sense, or how, you know, sometimes I think we think of learning as how quickly can what I'm saying go from my brain to your brain. That's learning. It's really not, right? The way that you really learn this stuff is that I say something that doesn't make any sense to you, and you gotta fight like hell to make it make some sense and have some value. And then you get so much more than anything I could have said in the first place, right? So keep that in mind. Okay. So this, forgive me if we do some overlap from what Jason did last time. So this is really about this course in general. The biggest chunk of it is about the mind-only school. So the mind-only school of Buddhism. Let me ask you a question first. How many, Buddha had kind of several different phases of his teaching career?
Sorry, what was the question?
The Buddha had several different, I haven't asked yet. Buddha had several different phases of his teaching career, right? So how many of those were there? 3. Very good. Okay, what are they called? Just as a group. 3. Okay, great. 3 turnings of the wheel. 3 turnings of the wheel. So which one is this class mainly concerned with? Third turning. Very good. So we're in the third turning of the wheel. Okay, so let's reconstruct a little bit. So which one does our tradition say is the quote-unquote correct turning? Second turning. Second turning. Weird.
I think I got this wrong last week.
No, it's okay. Good.
I thought it was the third.
Okay, yeah, the second turning. So why did the Buddha say, yeah, this first turning, which we're saying logically is somewhat incorrect. The second turning is correct, and then this third one, which is coming later, they're in chronological order. Why was this third one done after the second? It seems like the most recent one would be the one that's the right one, right? So why does it go like 2 is correct and then 3 is somehow isn't correct? We talked about that yet? No. Okay, that's good. No. Okay, let's get into this a little bit. So let's kind of like just lay out the kind of these three turnings in broad strokes. First off, when you look at the readings and you look at the homework, not that that's mandatory in any way, right? There's this phrase that keeps coming up, exists by definition. Is there a bell for anybody? I don't know if that's for you. Exists by definition? Have we gone over that? What do you think that means? If something exists by definition.
Universal.
Say again.
Something universal.
Something universal. Say a little more.
Something that's obvious to everybody. Something that's not arguable.
That's good.
Yeah.
Right, good. Good. Okay, so if it exists by definition, it's basically like it's clear to everybody. Because what you're pointing to is actually exactly the point. There's nothing I have to bring to this thing in order to see it the way it is. It's that way in and of itself. Right? This we'll get into later, like for example, now is somebody's name like that? Like, does my name, Jed, exist on me by definition? Is it universally recognized? Why not? Say louder.
If you didn't tell someone your name.
Right, if you didn't tell somebody your name, they wouldn't know your name. So it can't be by definition that I'm Jed because, well, then it would be universally recognizable. Right? And it'd be impossible to have aliases. It'd be impossible to have two names because you just would have one name here.
Or once you do tell, you find anyone arguing about it?
Well, yeah, I mean, since 5 ways. Like, that's John. No, that's Cassandra. No, that's, right?
I mean, if you told me your name, I wouldn't be arguing with you. I don't think so. Like, her name is not that. I'm not sure. You know what I mean? That's,
I could lie to you.
oh,
I could lie to you. Right? Yeah, good. This is good. This is what needs to happen, right? Okay. So when we talk about by definition, a lot of this stuff, this whole understanding the third turning is basically a crux on saying what does exist by definition and what doesn't exist by definition. So it's really important to get this idea of what is by definition, right? So by definition, the way I understand it, and this is from me doing other research, but I think it's done it, but check me on this. By definition basically means the thing that you say about the object or how you describe the object is findable in the object itself. So findable, it's a little bit of a weird concept, but basically it kind of really means the way it sounds, which is, I have this thing called cup, right? Like, the sound cup is not what I'm referring to when I say cup. I'm referring to a thing, right? Right? Like, right? The sounds. That's not what I'm talking about when I say cup. The cup as a reference, right? Which is just object. Looking so far, right? So if the cup exists by definition, that means without the concept cup, without the label cup, I can go looking in this thing and find the cup. Right? Like, there is something in this object that makes it a cup, that warrants me calling it cup. Yeah? Kind of makes sense. Okay, so, all you Prasanghikas, what exists by definition in Prasangika? In Prasangika, what exists by definition?
Nothing.
Yes, very good. In Prasangika, nothing exists by definition. Why? Why? Say again. So when it comes to us. Yeah, that's one way to talk about it. What is the cup to a dog? It's not a cup. Right, this is a classic, right? Because, this is what actually Michael says, like, if a cup was a cup to a dog, if a cup was a cup by definition, then a dog would say, ooh, I enjoy the tea in this cup. Because what is a cup? It's a function. When we say cup, it's a functioning thing. It's something I can drink at, right? If that was coming from the object, then anybody who encountered the cup should know how to drink it, right?
But we only know how to drink that because we're trained to know.
Right. So this is an argument from Prasangika's side that this is the Prasangika argument that nothing can exist by definition. Right? Okay, so go back. In Chittamatra, which is my home school, the cup exists as a cup by definition. Some things about the cup don't exist by definition. Some things about the cup we throw on in our arguments. But the cup as a cup exists by definition. So we'll get into more detail about what that means. But you got to keep going back to this idea of findability. And it really is the process. Prasangika, again, or even we just go to the topic, which is a little bit away, but you say that, well, the cup isn't findable in and of itself because when I go in, what am I really looking at? There's just parts of the cup, right? There's a handle, and then there's a brim, and there's a body, and I put all those things together and I say cup. But the only thing that my word cup is referring to is these collection of parts. There's no thing that I can find cup on here that's just the object itself. Right? Does that make sense? Well, then how do I know it's a cup? That makes sense. What things? Well, when I take all the parts and I take them apart, and then I just like have. Well, then why? But if it's just the parts, then why is it? Then it should not be a cup, whether it's broken parts. So they have to be joined parts to be a cup.
Well, it wouldn't look very good.
Okay, something into that. So then.
What's the question? Why are you referring to it?
Functions.
Yeah,
Because it functions as a cup.
yeah, because it's functional.
How can it function as a cup before I know it's a cup?
We are because of the part.
But we're saying what establishes it as a cup. We establish it as a cup. Right. This is Prasangika. So let's go back. Okay. So back up. Let's go to the first turn. So what's going on in the first turn in terms of this idea of things existing by definition? Yes, everything exists as well. Not everything.
Just the way you see it. Everything is just the way you see it.
Say more. What do you mean just the way I see it? Like I see purple elephants flying in the skies. I don't know if I see it correctly.
You may say
Well, we have say again?
They exist independently as projections, regardless of your path. I mean, not getting too finished, but regardless of anything else.
Okay. Okay. Good. So what does that mean? So okay, if this thing exists as a cup the way it is, regardless of my projections. If you say cup and I say swimming pool, could we both be right?
Sure, yeah.
We can. But you said it was a cup on its own side, so how could we both be right?
They're not based on the first training.
Before flying.
Not based on the first
First training, in the context of the first
Not
training.
based on the first training.
So in the first training, what if we
That's
say,
a cup.
so who's right and who's wrong? If you said,
And that's excluded.
so we're just in first training. Assuming first training, if you say cup and I say swimming pool, who's right and wrong?
Whoever's seeing the cup.
Okay, whoever says cup, right? Okay, good. So this is a crucial point of this first training. It exists as things exist the way, not as they appear. They exist in certain ways, right? And you're either wrong about how you see it or you're right about how you see it, right? Okay? What?
Can you
Sure.
elaborate on that concept?
Let's say 10%. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? That wouldn't be true in the school.
So there's always a right.
You gotta go and check that. There's a right or wrong. The qualities of things are inherent in the objects themselves.
So are we saying that it's whoever says it first, not?
Why?
Like, as to who is right and who is wrong?
Okay, so I say it's a swimming pool, but I see it first. I'm like, a swimming pool.
And so it's something.
Why?
I don't know.
Why? If it's coming from the object, why would it be a swimming pool? This is what I say it's a swimming pool.
Oh, but a cup is by definition, so you'd be wrong.
I'd be wrong. In this turning, I'd be wrong.
Because it is a cup.
It's a cup.
Okay.
This is not something weird and abstract. Give me that look. In this turning, now I mean it gets a little technical because there's things like let's put it this way. Okay. So it's like the cup. It's not like all qualities of the cup are inherent. For example, they would say, this first turning would say, like from my understanding, like the cup has inherent weight. Whether you talk about the weight of the cup or not, it has weight. It has a color. Whether you talk about the color or not, it has a color, right? It has a shape. It has a temperature, right? It has all these inherent qualities. Now, they're going to say that there is something going on in mental labeling. Now, let's say I say for something, oh, this is hotter than something else, right? That's not inherent in the cup, obviously, because it's relative to another object. Same thing with measurement, right? The cup is 6 inches tall. Well, that's relative to inches. So you can't say, well, this is not inherently 6 inches tall. It's relative to a marker, which is an inch, right? So in this school, they're going to say there are inherent qualities about the cup. Its weight, its temperature. You know, I think they even say things like it's good, it's bad. But again, the way you describe these things are relative to something else. So it's a little bit of a technicality, right? I don't want to go too far down, but it's but the point is like these dimensions of the cup are inherent. It has those dimensions, and your mind is just throwing onto these. It's not throwing the dimensions themselves onto it. It's just describing the dimensions that are already. Does that make sense? Yeah. So your boss is an asshole. It's just how much of an asshole is he in your language in comparison to other people, right? It's a different. It's a different. Well, it's less sophisticated, you say. Now in this school, the reason that we get ignorant is, you know, I see the cup and I say it is hot, right? It has this dimensionality of hot. It has some type of dimensionality of temperature. In the moment I say hot, right? And then I'm like, okay, it is a hot cup of tea. And then obviously what happens to the tea over time? Cools down, right? But I still have what in my head? Hot, right? What is my labeling? What type of thing? You guys took class with me last time. The cup is a changing thing. What is my label? Hot. Not changing, right? I'm taking a not changing thing and I'm throwing it onto a changing thing. Oh, good. So you should have no fear about dying. Or you shouldn't have any, you know, breakups shouldn't surprise you. Because you know. I mean, if you really know, sure, we might know with the tea, but.
Yeah, I mean, but it's cute that, right? Good tea.
Oh no, it is definitely.
Oh, I mean, because I guess. Is that how you're looking at it?
Yeah. We were talking eons of time spans here, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
Everything's changing. Right? So in this school, this is our source of suffering. Right? We have unchanging. Now we are correct. I mean, the tea is in and of itself hot in that moment. You know, we're right about all these things in the moment. The problem is we grasp onto these things that we label on top of them, and then things change, and you don't recognize that they're changing. Right? That's the big pitfall in this first term. Right? But we'll see in the next training that we're making even more mistake than that. I want to say something interesting about karma in this turning, because this is always threw me for a loop. And we'll just do it as a side note and we'll come back to it. So, in this school, talk about karma, right? Karma is not the only causal factor in this school. This is again the first term. Karma is not the only. This is where they talk about the 5 niyamas, right? 5 niyamas, but it's like environment. So you have stuff like it's not the niyamas from yoga. It's a whole different thing. It's like physics, properties of physics. That's a causal factor. Matter behaves in a certain way, right? The weather, another causal factor. Biology, another causal factor. Karma, and then there's another one. But karma, in my understanding, is basically it's how you it's your level of happiness, really. It's your contentment with the world, right? So it's interesting in this journal. This is where you get the idea of nirvana, right? This whole thing about omniscience and Subodhikaya and all this kind of flowery, experiences in gods is really not possible in this school, because what you're really dealing with is you can be happy in a changing world. Does that make sense? Because what you really only have control over directly is your karma. The way you behave with other people is going to affect how happy you are. It's actually pretty straightforward, right? Emanating countless worlds, seeing the minds of all people directly, not possible in this school, because that's your karma factor is karma is a very limited causal factor. It just really has to do with your level of how you experience things happily, if you experience it negatively, right? With me? Yeah. So this is why it makes sense in this school. This is why only Nirvana is the biggest aspiration. You can't really do more than that, because that's all that's possible in the whole ontology. Okay, so what's the difference between Nirvana and enlightenment then? That's part of it. Pay attention. Say it again. Maybe. I'm not there yet, I can't tell you. So.
You mean in this school? Or in general?
In general.
In our school?
In our school, yeah. Okay. Side note, this is very interesting. The lower schools actually recognize enlightenment. That's where the whole thing tends to the 60th eons to get to enlightenment. It's interesting. They recognize this thing as enlightenment is possible, actually. They just say, like, it's going to take you 10 times 60, whatever eon. Just like, work with Nirvana, you'll be fine. Right? Because they say that you can do that apparently in 4 lifetimes. Just work on being happy, and then it's a whole other ballgame. Okay, so we're digressing.
So what does enlightenment mean?
In this school, I think they say, I don't know if it's, I don't really know. I don't know if they include omniscience or not. I think the way I've heard it described is the Buddha is equal with arhats, with people in nirvana, in terms of spiritual attainment. But there's something about his ability to teach that's good. He has skillful means. So it's not a degree of difference of spiritual attainment, it's a degree of skillful means. But what I don't exactly know what that means. It could be omniscience. Okay. So now we go over to the second trinity of the wheel. So in the second trinity of the wheel, what things exist by definition? Nothing. Sure.
No, I'm sure.
You sure about that? Okay. So, nothing exists by definition. So is the cup a cup by definition? Okay. Heather, I say it's a swimming pool. You say it's a cup. Who's right? Both. Right? Possibly. Now, this becomes like a whole thing because you can't have invalid perceptions in this school, which is a whole other, that's kind of a nuance. The idea is that there's nothing from the cup that's demanding the cup.
You see, and not have any.
So you can't. No, it's possible to have an invalid perception in school, but that gets nuanced and, you know, what makes it an invalid perception versus just being a valid perception for somebody else. See what I mean? Relative to their own being. And that's a detail. But the idea is contradictory claims can both be valid. Why? Because it's relative to the individual. Right? Let's see. Okay, so here we were already kind of talking about it, but for the first running of the wheel, I say cup, and or even I say hot, and there's something I can find about this on the side of the object that makes it hot. I mean, this is how we experience the world, right? Like, I say, ooh, that's hot, and I stick my finger in it, and I'm like, yeah, it's hot, right? The hotness seems findable in the thing that I'm assigning hotness to, right? I mean, whether, even myself, as much as I like to think that I like to know about philosophy and, research about these things, like, I'm in a, first turning worldview. It's like, I say something about the world, and because the only reason I ever say anything about the world is because I think that's how it is, That's the only reason you ever get in arguments about anything, right? Yes. So, in this school, though, it's interesting because we're saying nothing exists by definition is that my calling it hotness and it being hot, you can't tease those things out. Right? It's not hot before I call it hot, and it's not like just because I say hot, it's like that's a change of emotion. Right? The hotness of it and my calling it hot are interdependent. They coalesce. Now this is something, this gets confused. This gets a little confusing because it's not just about saying the words hotness, right? You have to understand we talk about conceptualization. Bugs, worms, amoebas, they have concepts. Why? Well, because an amoeba can say, this is food, that's fire, right? Think about it as categories, right? The idea is they have categories for things that they assign, I don't know how to say it, they conceptualize, right? So when I'm saying, you can very quickly go to like, oh, concepts, this is what humans do. But when we're talking about concepts in the Buddhist framework, we're saying you have a category for it. This is food. This is my mother. This is something I like. This is something I don't like. I mean, at the very base of it, right? It's like and don't like. Right? These are the poisons, blah, blah, blah. That's what creates conflict. So why are we talking about that? So the point is that in this turning mag, even when I stick my finger in and I have hotness, I think the hotness is coming from the thing, and then I am just recognizing it as hot. What this school is saying, there's no way that there's hotness there in the cup without you already having the concept to recognize it as hot. Right? One can't come before the other.
Understand if I touch this candle. Okay.
Well, I mean, this goes to the past and future lives, but the question was, what about a child? What about a child when they touch something for the first time? How do they recognize it as hot? You can flip it and say, well, how would they even ever have the experience of getting burned if they weren't recognizing it as hot in that moment? Like in the moment that they go like, there has to be a concept of that's hot, or else there wouldn't be a reaction.
So polarizes.
Polarizes.
Their experience of
Right.
recognizing hot means.
What hot means, well, you see, this is where it gets good. So what hot means is different than the concept of hot.
They don't know the concept of hot before they figure it.
Right. They don't know it before.
So right when they're doing it is when they realize the concept. That's when it polarizes.
Realize. Yeah, I guess it depends on what you mean by realize.
Experience.
Sure. Yeah. When they have the experience of hotness, there's always a concept of hotness, and then the thing that that you can't have the base of your concept without the concept already there. If you take that on, like if that's true for you, then past lives have to exist, because what you're talking about is, well, there's some type of thing for it, but like, let's even take that out. Where does the hotness come from in that case? Like when the child touches the stove, where is the hotness coming from that they experience? If they don't have if the concept is not, you see, if you say that the hotness and the concept hot has to co-arise, right? The child had to have that concept of hotness before the experience happened. It had to, because it can't come from the object. The object can't communicate the hotness. The hotness had to already be there, conceptually, right?
Isn't it
And if that's true, where did that come from?
Why is it a legitimate question? Why do I have to bother? Like, it didn't come from, I don't even know how would you answer that. Why, how can you answer that? Where did it come from?
It came from past life.
From where?
It came from a past life.
Past life.
It's or well, but here's the question: where else could it come?
from God. I mean, I'm just being
No, sure,
a
that's
devil's
good.
advocate. I mean, it came from a different planet. It was brought with some, other creature. There could be so many answers. Why?
Well,
Why don't we answer that?
we gotta kind of,
specific one?
I mean, we're working in the framework of causality, right? I mean, you could say like it just sprung out of nowhere too.
Yes, I mean,
But if you're saying everything has a cause, I'm basically, you go down the line of thought, if everything has a cause, and those concepts are not coming from the objects that you're throwing them onto. It's got to come from some type of, it's got to come from prior moments of mind that are holding those concepts. Right? Get it over to
I was just thinking that the person who doesn't have a concept of hot and cold, you can get burned by cold too. So if you don't have a concept, then you're just reacting to the pain. So the child is reacting to the pain, and then let's just say the mother will bend down and say, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. That's hot. You can hurt yourself." So just like the child's stumbling around the kitchen, the mother points out, "That's a clock. What's that? That's a clock." So it has the concept of hot cut. Just like we've been trained with the concept when we see, police barriers or detour barriers, we stay away from them.
But it's the same thing, right? Like, you also can't get your concepts from somebody just communicating them to you. It's the same thing. Just like I can't get my concepts from the object.
No, because you have to interpret what you're being told.
Right.
You're forming
So
robots.
even when your mom says that's hot, you have to have a concept of hot. See, this is what I was saying at the beginning of class, the whole idea of like, I can't give you anything that's material that you don't already have, right? It's somewhere in there. It's the same thing. We think that, oh, well, I experienced it as hot, I'm like, what happened? And then somebody explains to me, oh, that was hot, and now I have a new concept called hot. But if you really take on this idea that the basis and the concept are interdependent, there's no way that somebody could explain something to me and then I have a newly formed concept, right? Even in the moment where my mother says, oh, this was hot, blah, 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 blah. I've had to already have that concept for her words to never even make sense.
Or she could say it's cold, right?
She could say it's cold.
And it still hurts. It's like sitting on a nice little
Sure.
Does that make
But no, keep going.
So I'm just saying, like, so is past lives for Buddhists the same as faith for Christians?
No, look, so here's the first thing. First, I'm not saying there are past lives. All I'm saying is if it's a conditional statement. If you take this idea of the concept and the basis co-arising, that could be wrong. We haven't proven that. But I'm saying if you do, you immediately come against the question of where your concept's coming from. As soon as you say that your concepts are not coming from something physical, you can no longer come into this idea that you come into this world with a blank slate. If you don't come into this world with a blank slate, then you're coming with some mental baggage. And that's
Okay.
We'll probably get
sorry.
So I just wanted to bring up another example that I think might help the conversation. The monk that was in Vietnam that lit himself on fire, that experienced, at least from our perspective, whatsoever. Right? So you go from a child who touches a flame and is burnt to you evolve your mind to a certain level. I don't know what that even means, but that you can sit involved in flames and not have any pain.
Right. So bring back to the concept. Bring back to the idea of the concept. So why is he not experiencing pain?
It's coming from his mind, right? It's coming from his perception.
But what does he not have? What does he not have in that instant that prevents him from feeling pain?
The harmony that we experience.
Right. Specifically, he doesn't have the concept. He doesn't have the concept for suffering or pain in his mind that would allow him to feel suffering while involved in flames, and that's why he doesn't.
So how could you, if something is, so with the first turning of the wheel, like, I'm sorry, are you saying that, like, the cup, when you say the cup is hot, that's something that we put on it, or that's inherently hot, even though it changes?
It's inherently high.
Okay, so, with that being said, you know whenever you like, I don't know, you send me little kids and some little kids like laugh when it hurts, and they're like not hurt by it, and some little kids like freak out. Like, it's different for everybody with the person, I guess, perspective, and everyone has like a different pain tolerance. So how would you fit that perspective in? Like, how would you not believe in the second turn of the wheel if everything's inherently hot?
We're mostly because we think some people are right, some people are wrong.
So
I mean,
wrong
this-
about what they feel?
Sure. We do this all the time. Somebody's crying over something and you're like, it's completely irrational that you feel that way. Or you shouldn't feel, every time we have the thought you shouldn't feel that way, we're in the first turn.
But for them, it's not.
Yeah, I agree, in theory, but how often do you really live like that? I mean, I don't, if you're there, like, I'm like, all the time, I invalidate people's feelings. And say, the way you're feeling is stupid, because it's not that way, right? So that's what I am.
So, okay.
And that's an important distinction. I mean, we can all kind of dance with this in the theoretical, world, but then, when you wake up in the middle of surgery, how much are you going to like embrace the second turning if it's, it's conceptual and bodied up, right?
It's a bit extreme.
Right.
It's gonna hurt.
But, yeah. But I mean, this is what we're talking about. I mean, these are the stakes, right? We're talking about, if we're really taking seriously ending all suffering, then yeah, it will be extreme. Because if it doesn't work in these arenas, then we're just having fun talking about things that kind of sound interesting, but are essentially meaningless.
I have sort of one more question.
Sure.
Could go to the topic, but the previous lives, wouldn't you hit this infinite regression sort of problem where we would say, well, it came from previous life and the previous life, and the previous life, and where the first life, where did that come from?
So moody.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. This is the proof. That's why you have proof of there's no first end. Infinite past.
Right.
There's no first cause.
Was my point. So if there's no cause, then how does it relate to the causality? So,
Well, this is interesting because Buddhism does distinguish this idea that just because there's no first cause, that doesn't mean that causality goes up. You see, this is the idea.
with certain things there is, and with certain things.
No. Everything is cause. There's just no first cause. See, this is the idea. But if you really look at it, the idea of a first cause kind of goes against the idea of causality itself. Because, well, if the first cause is not cause because it's the first cause, well, then everything henceforth is random. Because its natal source is something random, right? So we have this, and this is our grasping of self-existence. We have a wrong view about causality anytime that we say, maybe we all do. But we have a wrong idea about causality. We say, well, there must be a first cause. There must be a raison d'etre. There must be like the reason that the seminal reason why everything is the way it is, and this is a misunderstanding of causality. Because if there was such a thing, that wouldn't be causal, right? Good?
Yeah.
Great. This is fantastic because this is exactly what happened in the three turnings. You got the first turning, yes. And then the Buddha saw this top of second turning, and everybody's like, wait a minute. And there's a million questions. And then they say, like, 500 months have heart attacks or something. That's literally like, it was like a bunch of just things, like, no. That's it. So you've illustrated perfectly why you did the third turning, right? So the third turning was basically like, oh, slow down. It's not that everything is just it co-arises concept and concept and basis. So in this third turning, some things exist by definition and some do not. Let's break this down kind of general example. So cup. Damn cup, just put it on the You do that. So cup. Third turning of the wheel. I call it a swimming pool. Heather calls it a cup. Who's right? Both right or both wrong? So in this turning, I'm wrong if I call it a swimming pool. You're right if I call it a cup. Right? Now let's talk about the weight of the cup. This gets tricky. Let's back up a little bit. Let's I call the cup Joe. Heather, or I call it swimming pool Joe. Heather calls it Frank. Right? Who's right?
Both of them, right and wrong.
Yeah, so both. So you'll see, and that kind of is like, okay, it's obvious. But so I go ahead, let's go a little bit more subtle. I got this swimming pool, right? I got a swimming pool and somehow I jump in and test water. I'm like, oh, it's freezing. Right? Heather drinks the cup, right? She says, oh, it's warm. Now, who's right or who's wrong about it being warm or cold? I'm definitely wrong about it being a swimming pool. But what about the temperature?
Someone has.
Huh? Right. In this case, so you can see what's happening here, right? It's like, in the first turning, the qualities are inherent in the object. Hot, cold, blah, blah, blah. You're ignorant because you think that those things are going to change, but the way that they are the way you perceive them. Right? In this turning, there's definitely an object out there that is either a cup or a swimming pool. I mean, this makes sense, right? Because if I really said, I'm looking at this thing and I say it's a swimming pool, you're just going to be like, well, you're crazy, right? As much as we talk theory, you're not going to be like, oh, I can see you. That's a swimming pool. How great are your experiences for you, right? It's not going to be, you're going to think I'm wrong, right? But, you know, let's talk about the Dodgers. I know nothing about sports, so I don't know what I'm doing towards now. But we talk about the Dodgers, right? Okay? I say they're awesome. You say they suck, right? We both have this kind of understanding, okay, that the suckiness or the goodness of the Dodgers is not really inherent in the Dodgers. It's like, well, what's your criteria of a good baseball team? You know, what's my criteria of a good baseball team? It's this is something that we're not going to say. It's like we kind of all get that the Dodgers are not a good or bad baseball team in themselves. So this is what Buddha was teasing out. In the first turning, he was saying all these things, like the Dodgers are either good or bad, but they like wrong about that. Second turning, he's like, there's not even a baseball team out there. Right? And then you have to put cordyceps. And then, because they love their sports teams, right? And then you take it back a little bit and you say, no, there is a baseball team there. The way you describe it, the qualities about it, you know, your kind of your dispositions about it are individual. That's relative to your own conceptualizations. There's another interesting dimension of this school, as apart from the second turning. It's really funky. So let's go back to the first turning. The first turning, let's talk about this example. I don't know why this example. Let's say windstorms on Mars. There's a windstorm happening on Mars, and it's away from the road, right? Nobody's seeing it. Right? Does that windstorm exist? In the first turn? Yes, it does exist, right? It doesn't matter. It's there whether you want to recognize it or not. Right? In the third turn, bypass the second, does that windstorm exist? Now this is where it gets tricky.
Yes and no. I mean, knowing how consciousness. Not. Since we're not experiencing it, so it doesn't. But since we know it's existing somewhere, then we say, yeah, it does.
You can't ever really talk about something existing and not knowing about it. This is the kind of third turning step. Because as soon as you talk about it, you know about it. So as soon as I say a windstorm on Mars, I've already said it exists. So now I can't retract what I'm saying and say, well, but nobody's perceiving it. Like, you just talk about it through perceiving. You can make up something, that's true, but we're trying to talk about existing things.
But no, let's see, you can't count it. So, I mean, like, you just said you make it up. You just see.
Right. But I'm saying, no, there's this thing that exists out there, but nobody knows about it.
You're saying it.
But I'm already saying it exists, right? So this is where you get, in the third turning, this idea of things exist. It's not, things have their own, like there is a cup out here, right? There is a cup out here about which you can either correctly call it a cup or incorrectly call it a cup. But it only exists in relationship to a receiver. No, the cup is actually, well, they deny external objects. This is going to get technical. Why don't we, how are we feeling for a break? Because I can feel it's like this, and we can either go deeper, and then everybody's going to fall off to sleep and we get a little recharge. So, we good for a break?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, let's take just like 5 to 7 minutes. That's great. Okay, cool. So, level. Constructs. Okay, so it's kind of a side point. Mind-only school is very different than first turning because in this school, everything is coming from your karma. Third turning. You have a karmic, which is interesting, I'll say, because that's not what the second turning says. But that's a whole big discussion. Right? This is a big misunderstanding. In the second turning, it's not, your karma is not creating everything. We can talk about that deeply. Right? Yeah. So Prasangika is not saying that everything comes from your karma. You actually say closer to the first turning. Talk about several factors. So we can talk about that. Okay. So in the third turning, everything's coming from your karma. So how does this work? This is why they say that yes, there's something out there that your concepts are referring to that exists as some object, right? But they're saying you can't find an object that somehow can exist outside the receiver, outside of it. So this is why they say why? Because you have a karmic seed and flowers is both the thing being received and the receiver. Actually, more detail. They say that there actually is no thing out there as an external object. It manifests as your sense faculty and your sense consciousness. Right? So really, you can think about it like you have this thing called the foundation. This is a little technical. You have a thing called the live vijnana. This is your foundation consciousness. And you can think of it as a blob, right? And really, when you're looking at something, you can think about this blob kind of extending, and it's looking at itself, thinking it's looking at an outside world. Right? It's kind of when you get this idea of non-duality, kind of like, there's no difference between me and the thing I'm looking at. It gets a little complicated, actually, this I'm not clear at, because they're not saying, it's not solipsism. It's not saying that there's just your mind and then everything out there is just you, right? There are other people. How this works, I'm a little unclear on, right? But they are saying that you're looking at a part of your own consciousness when you look at other objects. Not really looking at, like, up out there, right?
Is it a part, or is that our mind?
You gotta be careful when you say mind, because this is why mind only they posit a whole different kind of consciousness. Because usually when you say mind, you mean your awareness, right? Like your ability to perceive things or consciousness. But when they talk about alive and jnana, foundation consciousness, it's like a whole other thing. It's actually all changing things that are alive and jnana. It's like this thing that are made of karmic seeds. And the karmic seed manifests as both your consciousness and the thing that you're perceiving. So it's not coming from your mind in the sense of like, it's actually like you have a karmic seed and it ripens as your perceptual mind, and
That's just my
yeah, the karmic seed ripens as your mind and the thing you're doing.
The foundation consciousness personal?
Mama really came, she talked about it being universal. My understanding is that it's individual. And this is for me, that's me looking at person. So I looked at that question. So it's not, this is the kind of rejection of solipsism. There are individual separate foundation consciousnesses. Maybe, I mean, this gets into nuances. There might be some that say there's only one. You know, I think I have heard actually that in some Chinese interpretations, they talk about there being a universal singular foundational consciousness. And it's kind of like that, it's kind of like this Atman idea, that we're really all one consciousness and we just think we're separate. Nobody, yeah, that's the supreme nobody, right? But I think the original, from my understanding, that's a later interpretation. When you're talking about mindfulness and the Sangha, they're a separate foundation. But I could be wrong. Another question? No?
I remember when we went through this course with one foundation, she said, don't get stuck there though, with the mindfulness school and their version of karma and all that. It's not working.
So let's take a little. I think this is important. So we'll take a little bit of question. So in the mind-only school, there are no external objects. There's no actually other causal factors, but it's like. So my understanding is this. It's kind of like there's a bunch of causal factors like in a row, and karma is one of them. And from that, karma springs forth everything. What you perceive, your perception of it, blah, blah, blah. Right? The first turning of the wheel, karma is just one thing of a bunch of these five eons, causal factor, and all these other things. So it's kind of like a recipe. It's like you take a little physics, you take a little environment, you take your own karma, you mix that up, and you get this thing. Right? That's your experience. So in that system, you kind of see like, you know, you can have karma for, you know, something great to happen, but then the weather comes in and just ruins it. So it's a very complex thing. Like, and mine only really simplifies it. There's just kind of one like causal chain. In the first turning, it's like you've got all this nexus of causal factors bringing what happens. Now, the third turning. Now this is okay. This is a little technical. You want to break it down even more. This is for the Buddha heads, right? Bless you. Bless you again. See it. Kagyu Nyingma Shakya. They agree with the Sangha and the mind-only interpretation of how karma works. So they see it as, they use a Sangha system, right? Jay Sankapa is a complete radical. You gotta look at the life of Jay Sankapa. I mean, it's fascinating because he had this amazing appreciation for his teachers. Yeah, this guy. Amazing appreciation for his teachers, very devoted, amazing what we call Guru Yoga, which is like, you know, seeing the teacher in very high regard. I've had many, many teachers, he told them that they were all wrong. Right? Said, oh, you're so wrong. Right? And it's interesting, I mean, he's a great example now, because he, you know, this is what we all struggle with, especially in the West. It's like, I don't want to, you have to be respectful and emulate your teacher, but you can't just be submissive to them. Just, you know, not think and let them just kind of become their puppet, right? He's a great example of that because he really held both. So he said, no, the highest understanding of karma is actually not a sangha, it's actually a vasabandhu, which is this first turning interpretation. So my best understanding, and I'm still working this out, is that in the first turning, it's kind of like karma is one little ingredient in the rest of this big causal factors. When you get into second turning of the wheel, that's still true, except your karma is interdependent with all these causal factors. Right? So this is where you get into causes and conditions. For example, let's take a car accident, just because this is an example. You have an experience to have a car. You have the karma to have a car accident. Right? You get into a car accident. Now, does that mean your karma caused the person who hit you to get up at 7 a.m., happen to be driving on the highway at that moment, happen to look at his cell phone right when you were crossing the road and hit you? Did your karma cause that? Exactly. What about his karma, right? What about, how his car works and how fast it will go? What about everybody else? What about the weather? That makes it slow down, right? So the karma stuff makes a fundamental importance because without the karma to have a car accident, you're not going to get in a car accident. But that doesn't mean that your karmic seeds are causing everything that's happening, right? You have the karmic seed to get in a car accident. It's not like your karma jumped out of your head, woke the guy up, and be like, you're going to be late, you got to hit him at 10 a.m., right? It doesn't work like that. So this is the kind of nuanced thing where it's a reworking of vasabandhu, where there's these concomitant and nexus of causes. You can't reduce it all to karma. But that doesn't change the fact that you can't experience anything outside of your karma. That's why it's
So what's the cause for that?
I mean, same thing. I mean, his karma, like that has a whole nexus of causes.
So is that just by that?
No. It's interdependent with your karma. How is it interdependent? You can't establish the existence of those things independent of your conceptualization. But that doesn't mean it creates. I mean, this gets into something subtle. The best I can say, the way I understand it, if you say that your karma creates it, you've gone into the space of legalism. Why? Because you're saying that there's nothing out there besides your karma. Right, you're saying the only thing, this is the whole idea of causing conditions. Now, how does this translate in a real way? For example, you're also never going to get into a car accident if you never have conditions for a car accident.
But those conditions can be created by.
Sure. It's always interdependent.
Exactly. So in that way, can't you say that it's all caused by it?
You can say it's all interdependent with your karma. You can't say it's all caused by it. Because if you say it's all, you've gone into a space of, I think it doesn't make that much of a difference in terms of behavior. It makes a big difference in terms of understanding things. Because let's take an example. Right? Let's say I think that a garden will happen just for I want to have a literal garden, right? I want to have a literal garden with lettuce and spinach regarding that. So this is so I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to meditate on the garden and I'm not going to do anything, right? I'm never going to get a garden. I have no basis of imputation. I have nothing on which to put for my karma of garden to manifest. Now, here's the tricky part. Is that also a result of my karma, that I never put in the conditions to have a garden, right? Is it also a result, did I really have, is it also a result of my karma that I don't have the causes to have the conditions for which to have the karma of a garden ripening, right? That's also true. These things are interdependent, but that doesn't mean that you can't talk about them as components. Right?
Sure, but they still come from your past action. The point
But
is
not
saying
exclusively.
that-
Not exclusively.
Well, like if it's circumstantial, then it's not,
But where do those
wouldn't come
circumstances,
necessarily from your karma.
where do those circumstances come?
From physical, it depends on the basis of mutation from physical things.
Well,
So where does that come
The first physical laws probably, I don't know.
Yeah,
from? Then they exist by definition.
No, they exist independently, but that doesn't mean they don't exist at all. You're going to the extreme of they don't exist at all.
I didn't say that. You were saying that I said that.
So the what is?
I'm saying it's all dependent on my karma.
Sure, that's what I said. It's all interdependent with your karma.
Sure, then that's what it means to say it's all created.
No, it doesn't.
What does it mean to say created?
Created would mean, just like I'm saying, that you have to think of it as things coming together,
Sure.
right? If you say that it's just coming from your karma, you're thinking that the karma is somehow creating the things. That's my own, right? But there is this idea, if you have the karma for something to happen, right? And it's not going to be projected, well, this is getting kind of controversial, but you can't really talk about it through time. It's just in any one moment. There's your karma and the thing that you're imputing.
Sure. But the thing that you're imputing is also.
No. The thing that you're imputing is also coming from karma and its own basis of imputation.
Exactly. But
But it's not coming exclusively from
who's
karma.
karma?
Who's karma?
Who's karma?
Your karma.
And then that basis of imputation is coming also from karma in this basis of
Yeah,
imputation.
sure.
And that's coming also from karma in that basis. So it's my karma creating it.
It's not, because what you're doing is, when you say create, here's the difference between create and co-arising. When you're saying create, you're saying there's karma and then basis. That creation, what is the definition of causality? You're letting me do, right? This is the material cause. The cause has to go out of existence by the time the result comes into effect. That's the definition of causality, right? If you say that the karma is creating, you're saying that karma has to go out of existence by the time the basis of imputation arises, which can happen. So this is what we mean by the fact that it's not causal. It's interdependent. So one is not coming before the other. That means that your karma is not.
So what is this cause?
Let me.
I see both, though. I mean, I see both sides, but like in your defense, like what does it matter? Like even though these things co-arise, it's all the karma is a deciding factor of whether it's going to be there or not.
Well,
so why not
yes and
just
no,
let it
but it's
happen?
not, because I think this does result in practice in that you, in a very on the ground way, you can't just sit and meditate and have things happen. Now, if they don't happen to you, is that also a result of karma? Yes, you can explain it also in terms of karma. The way this results in practice is it's helpful to think, and it does correspond to reality. You have to put the causes into play, and then you also need the conditions, right? So like working out. You know, a lot of people have this thing about like, well, if I just meditate on being healthy, you know, I'll get healthy. Or, you know, this thing about, if I just meditate on good health, I don't need to go to the doctor. And this is a nihilistic view. You have to put in the causes, but then the conditions might manifest as going to the doctor, taking the medicine, doing the work. Right? So now, is it the case that if you just meditated and decided not to work out, yes, you could also break that down to the karma basis of imputation. I'm not denying that. But it does, but on a fundamental level, having this knowledge of causes and conditions helps us realize that there's two parts going on. You have to create both the mindset and the basis. Yes.
There's this funny joke, and the guy goes, "Yeah, I'm gonna just win the lottery ticket," and the guy goes, "Yeah, but you will have to go and buy it first."
Right.
You know, so that's it sort of kind of boils down to that. You know, if my karma is great, it's amazing. You know, and I had and I'm poor and I won $1,000. You know, if I meditated, the karma is there for me to get it. But just meditation itself,
Right.
I guess it's not gonna get me $1,000.
Right.
But if you meditate properly, you will go and buy the ticket. And if you don't,
That's true. That's true.
Or the money will
So in the end,
stop.
Sure, but
or it will. Yeah.
by meditation alone, you won't. get $1,000.
But
Now you're being
but see, look, here's the point. Your logic about meditating only can equally be applied to conditions. You know, you could also say, well, if I just create all the conditions, this is kind of how sadhanas work actually. If I just create all the conditions, then my karma for money is going to have to flower. And that's actually kind of true too. It's just that it's not going to happen at all without the karma. Right? It's definitely not, this is the idea, the karma is a sine qua non. It's like this is why they keep talking about a seed, right? A seed, you're not going to get an orange tree if you don't have an orange seed. You're also not going to get an orange tree if you don't have water, sunlight, good soil, etc. But those things can be a little bit more. You might use Miracle-Gro, you might use Howden. You know, you might use a fake bulb, you might use a real sun, right? You have to have conditions, but those things are not. Those don't have to be definite. So this is why we talk about karma more, because but conditions are similar in that you could also use the logic. If I create the right conditions, I can just focus on conditions. Whatever good karma I have in there, it's gonna flower. Let's move on a little bit, yeah, because we can go all night on this. We can have it for like 3 years.
Can I just ask,
Yeah.
if you're going to emptiness, what would you do?
We're going to emptiness a little bit. Sure. Emptiness a little bit.
Well, that's
Oh, okay. Wait, do you want to do them?
I just want.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Let's do. Let me get a little bit into a little bit of these. Let me try to. Okay. Wait, let's birds. We're just killing birds. That's not good. Okay. So let's do. Okay. Let's use the pen to book with the 3 attributes. How's that sound? So let's back to mind only. Over here. Mind only really breaks down to these 3 attributes. We get to this last time. Constructs, what are the other ones? Changing things and. So, what's a construct? Yes, it's like a sky cloud. It's funny because I took philosophy for undergrad, and they talked a lot about one of my teachers talked about this idea of skybooks, which is it's funny because it's like the same metaphor basically. The skybook, it's something that's impossible that you dream of because it's this idea of like bootstrapping, like a hook that existed in midair that could lift itself up. Right? It's a great image because it's kind of like it's something that can't really exist on any foundation of anything, right? It's something that you completely dream of, like a skybook, or like well, you take a boss. The boss that's angry from its own side without you calling it. That's like a sky. It's something. It's an impossible way of existing. Okay. Okay. That's constant. So constructs are your mental constructs. They're things that you just kind of make up in your head. Right? Sometimes they're right, and sometimes they're wrong. So let's take the cup. When I have the cup, I'm looking at the cup. This is gonna, for all of you guys who've had GJ drawing, this is very similar, right? I look at the cup, and there's a cup out there. And then I have a concept of the cup, right? Now, when I'm looking at the cup, am I looking at the cup, or am I looking at my concept of a cup? Right. It happens to be right. In this school, your concept of a cup is referring to a cup that's out there. This is in 3rd term, so this is my own. Now.
So the concept is like the operating system, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the operating system, then you just compare what you see in front of you, and if it's a match, then it's a cup. It's a cup.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like, well, again, it co-arises. I mean, in this school, the cup itself and your concept of the cup co-arise It's just you happen to be right, and there's a decision coming from it, right? They're not interdependent. They're independent from the point of view of causality. They were caused by the same thing, but once you have your concept of the cup and the cup itself, they're distinct, right? So you have the concept of the cup and the cup itself. Okay, now we have these other concepts about the cup. You know, green tea is the best tea that there is. Everybody knows that green tea is the best tea that there is, right? Do those concepts refer to reality? No. No. So, in this school, the biggest mistake that we make is we think the concepts that we apply to objects, namely the qualities, right? Knowing that this is cup and calling it a cup, that's fine. So you're right. Knowing that this cup, it's saying this is a good cup, right? And thinking that's inherent in the cup, that's the cause of all your stuff. So you have a dependent thing out here, and it's actually void of any qualities in and of itself, right? You can't say good, bad. I think it goes as far as saying you can't even say weight, because they say on this thing, we can't even talk about the weight of the cup until you have the concept of weight. See how it's getting closer to that's what you get, right? This is a stepping stone, right? So there's definitely an object out here that is a cup. But when I start to conceptualize it as, well, what's the weight of the cup? What's the temperature of the cup? These are all, they're going to say, mental constructs. And you can validly put them on the cup. I mean, you're not wrong, right? Your conceptualizations are valid. What you're wrong about is thinking those conceptualizations are part of the cup. So
you're collapsing things.
You're collapsing things, yeah. That's funny to say collapse. So I was going to say, this is, for all of you guys who have done landmark, this is a kind of landmark forum. This is their whole shit, right?
The story.
Yeah, it's all mind-opening. There's what happened, right? Which is like the cup out here, you know, the reality of the object, and then there's a story. It's good or bad, it's old, it's all this other stuff, yeah.
So I don't get how weight would fall, unless you're saying like heavy or light, but if you're talking about measurements, then what about fine.
What about measurements? Right, yeah. Right, these things are relative. They're not inherent as the object. The conceptualization is based on comparing something to arbitrarily something else, right? There's no inherent weight.
What is inherent?
Say it.
What is inherent?
In this school? Like what qualities are inherent?
What is inherent? Wait, yeah.
In this school?
Maybe not quality, but maybe something else besides quality.
So you gotta go back to like inherent existence. You see, in Prasapika, this is simple because there's a million words that refer to inherent existence. Now, all the other schools, they say it is inherent in this way, not inherent in this way, right? What is inherent, they say, like, one thing I think they say is that it exists naturally. So, like, I love how Burson says it, it's wrapped in plastic. Like, the delineation of this being its own individualized object, that's inherent to the object. You know, where this cup starts and where it ends, that's inherent in the object.
The outline, the actual physical dimension.
I wouldn't even go that far. I would more just say the fact that you're identifying this as its own individualized object, worthy of a name.
I thought that's in my concept. What exists by definition from the cup?
That this is an individualized object. You
functions.
But not
just
any, not size, weight, or any kind of qualities.
no, because they're gonna say that. I mean,
all
this,
objects are the same.
Hmm?
And all objects are
no, they're not all the same. It's just that when you, it's also size and weight. It's not false, right? It's not like saying size and weight doesn't exist. It's just you're confused when you think that that's inherent in the object.
But what isn't there?
The fact that if you go look, let's look at it this way. If I have the concept cup, okay, and then all of a sudden I strip away my concepts, right, and I'm looking at the cup non-conceptually, I'm going to find this cup, this object that I'm referring to. Now, let's go back and I talk about temperature of the cup, right? Strip away all my concepts again. I'm not going to be able to find the temperature of the cup because that's a conceptualization based on relative to other things, measurements. I'm going to have to go back in the world of conceptualization to make any sense of temperature.
What is this? This object that I will find when I strip away all the conceptualizations. What is that?
An individualized object. That is a basis of
There's no
computation.
qualities, no size, no weight, no description.
Yeah, I mean, it's a subtle point. I mean, a lot of this, in this school, it's difficult because it's some essence. It has an essence. It has an essence. But the way they explain it is there's something about it that makes it a cup. I mean, this is also why the school breaks down, right? Because they're saying there is something, this is why Prospect says you can't differentiate the essence of something from the quality of something, right? Because they're going to say what you're calling the essence is just a project. This is when you get into the next step. What you're alluding to is that what you're calling the essence is just a conglomerate of qualities, right? That's the next step. But in this school, they're going to say, no, there's something that makes it an essence that's cupness, but it's independent from the qualities that you attribute to the cup.
Can I maybe like create a little distinction here?
Sure.
I think what you're struggling with is by agreement, let's just say that, by agreement, it's a cup. By agreement. I mean, you don't have to go any further. That would be that, just that. I think any other quality you would like to attribute in this cup, for example, it's a big cup. You know, if you drink slurpee all the time for 7-Eleven, that to you would look like a small one. So now we argue. And I think this is...
Yeah, though the only thing is that when you talk about agreement, you're establishing the existence of the cup by convention. And then all of a sudden, they're going to say that, like, you don't need anybody else. If you strip away all your concepts, all your mental constructs, you're going to see cup.
Well, that's just so we can linguistically somehow create the distinction between the actual objectivity of the cup and other qualities that we add to it. And that's sort of, so I can just...
Yeah, objectivity, right. There's an objectivity to the cup. That's it. That makes it cup. Yeah, that's a good way to say it. I mean, I think it's good that it really went on the definition that what you conceptualize in a cup, the essence of the cup you can find out there in the cup. Anything that you talk about the cup is this, is that. When you talk about adjectives, that's not mind building. Apart from concepts.
Who can find this?
Somebody thinks you can find that. I don't think you have to be able to see things on the side. That's a whole other discussion. I've been looking at that one a lot too, and that's very interesting. I won't even go to it. I'm not even going to it.
Like Ari and Beyond, right? Is that what you mean? Ari and Beyond, not conceptual.
I thought this was cool. This is really cool. I like subject, but this is a really complicated. Gaelic says a whole different thing about what it means to see things not conceptually than the other three schools. So, okay, I'll just throw this out there. The Gaelic say that you can see mental constructs, you can see a mental construct non-conceptually. I'll just put that out.
Your own or others?
Your own. You can see your own mental constructs non-conceptually.
So then that means you can see it.
Yeah, it means a lot of things. That's a whole lot. Okay. Okay, so what is it? So emptiness, totality, right? Okay, let's do that. So the pen. So in this school, what is the emptiness of the pen in relation to these dependent things and these constructs? We've distinguished these two things. You got this mental concept that you're putting on the thing, and then you got the thing that you're missing. What would emptiness be? What is emptiness, by the way?
That's easy.
I'm going to do the context of this. We'll get it there. We'll get it. It's a method of my madness. So, pen. Right? You have a concept of a pen, and there's this thing that you're labeling on the pen. What is emptiness always? For those of you who know. Is it a positive thing or is it negative? Okay, it's a negative thing. What do you think in this school this pen is absent of.
This.
Just gonna ignore that. The pen does exist by definition in this rule. The essence of the pen exists by definition. What things don't exist by definition in terms of the pen? Yeah, characteristics of the pen. So in this school, it's a simple formula. Emptiness equals dependent things minus your wrong constructs about them. So, for example, this pen is long. That's a conceptualization. You think your wrong construct is you think that your concept wrong is inherent in the pen. That's also a concept you have. You have concepts about your concepts, right? Not only do you have the concept of the pen being long, that's fine. You have a concept that the longness of the pen is part of the pen itself, and not your conceptualization. The emptiness of the pen is the fact that that concept of long can't be found in the pen itself. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, let's do the proximity given. Right? Proximity given. So, proximity given. Okay, so this is a pen, right? Pen. Sure. So I take the pen and I go like this in front of the dog. And I throw it. Okay, what is it to the dog? Something run after, but I pick it up again. Chew toy. It's a chew toy. I'm leaving you with it. I'm leaving you with this. Okay, so is it the pen? That's a dog. So it's a chew toy. So this is a chew toy. It's a dog. Okay, so no human, no dog. What is it? Okay, that's emptiness, right? That kind of like what's left, right? So this is the difference right now. So we take this a step further when we get to proximity. In this school, no, there's a pen here. You just have certain wrong ideas about it. This is really interesting, actually, because Berzin talks about this, and he says, in every other school, you really can talk about emptiness as emptiness. Because I don't know if this is necessarily true of the word, but he says empty implies when something is empty of something, there's still something left over, right? There's like a container. Like when you have a glass that's empty, sure, there's an absence of the liquid, but there's something that is empty. There's something that's implied that's left there, right? The cup is empty. My belly is empty. Say it. Well, the emptiness is the absence, but when you get rid of the absence, there's something still there, right? This is fine. Now, same thing. Mind only, that's fine. You have a construct of the pen, right? You take away your construct about the pen, and there's something left over. This non-conceptual awareness of the pen that's kind of dependent about qualities, whatever the F that means, right? But there's something left over. Now, you just pointed to the highest understanding of emptiness, he really says more avoidance. Because when you take all the things away from your side, right, that you are using to designate as pen, there's nothing left over. It's completely void. There is nothing you can strip away to find some essence. It's all there. There's no thing there. That's why we talk about get rid of the dog, get rid of the person, what's left. It's just absence. It's not nothingness. Now, this is the thing.
So nothing has an essence?
Nothing has an essence. But this is interesting because this is where this school is kind of a stepping stone. You see, first turning of the wheel says things have identity and essences inherent. Right? The essence of the cup is part of the cup. They also say it has its natural basis for labor. That's all other point. But the cup is a cup, and it also has these qualities. Hot, cold, blah, 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 blah. Identity. It is this. It is that. Mind only takes an extra step and says, well, it has an essence of cupness, but all these other things that you're adding on top of it, it is this, it is that, those are conceptualizations that are not inherent. They're not wrong. You can validly put that on the cup. But they're not inherent in the cup. Prasangika goes the whole 9 yards. Right? Prasangika says, no, there's no essence, there's no identity, there's nothing that you can say is findable in the cup. Anything that you start with in terms of your behavior side, when you start to analyze it, is you're not going to be able to find it fundamentally full of essence in the cup. Right? So it's not nothingness though either. I'm not saying that there's nothing there. It's just everything there is interdependent. And our suffering and everything that we're trying to do is find these fundamental emphases, first causes. First cause is the big one. Self is the other big one. Who am I? I love this example. You can have, where's the talking about this? You can, a prostitute says, you can have my body, but you'll never have me. This idea that there's this me, that's your essence, independent of your body, your mind, and what we call the 5 attributes. Right? And this is the fundamental cause of your suffering. That you think that there is a you that's fundamental. And you do everything you can to defend that myth, and to promote it, and to, please it, and promote it over other people. This is the source. This whole belief in essences, right? So let's get this on the ground a little bit. So I think this helps as an example. But let's go back to School 3 because it's a good stepping stone. So let's just apply. So think of an insult. Like what is an insult that you honestly believe would be like self-existently insulting? You can say it. Got it.
Okay.
Okay, what's one? Okay.
I was told to use my brain as an input.
Okay. So, like you're dumb.
Yeah, that was a nice insult.
Okay. So can we all get on board with that? Like if somebody called you dumb, it would be insulting, right? I mean, you gotta like it's gotta have some resonance for you, or else this doesn't work, right? So if I say no,
I was never told that. It's fine.
just kidding. Okay, if you were, it doesn't have to have that. Okay, so somebody says you're dumb. Okay. So here's the thing. Construct is I am dumb. You are dumb. That's a construct, right? Yeah. I am dumb. I am dumb. That's okay. So the construct is I am dumb. What is the Shenron? What is the thing that's the basis that you're labeling now? Right? The essence. Well, what is the basis? I mean, in the context of this conversation. So you're sitting there thinking you're getting the concept I am dumb. What do you label that? If you believe what the person is saying, let's just simplify it. What do you label it on?
So,
Okay, let's make it a little bit. They're telling me I'm dumb. They're telling me I'm dumb. What's the basis? Where are you getting the meaning? Right. How does it feel? Where are you constructing this meaning from? Where is it?
From the concept. So
Well, that's where the concepts are. Okay, the concept. They say the concept plays in the channel, right? The concept is the thing that interacts with the dependent. So what is the dependent thing out there that you're getting the meaning? They're telling me I'm dumb. But what's the basis?
I'm not the other person.
That you are known versus the being governed.
No, that's what the phrase I'm dumb refers to. What is? I mean, somebody says you were dumb, right? Someone says you were dumb, and you take it to mean something. What do you apply meaning to? That's a simple way.
That person said it to you.
Them or sound, right? You don't see them. You don't look at them and say, "Oh, they're telling me I'm dumb." right? I mean,
you experience it through them vocalizing.
right. They said some words. They said some decimals. I mean, that's what happened, right? We can go to my This is what happens.
Yeah.
They said some decimals.
You translated that.
Are they words? Sure. Sure. You can say in this school, you can say each word is its own unit.
Sure, but they trigger your concept.
Sure. Totally.
That the concepts you're familiar with.
Totally. But where is that concept? Right. Is it in the words? What are the words? They're sounds. They're sounds. Right? So, if we really look at it, somebody calls you dumb. Why are you angry? Right. You put meaning behind it.
You're taking those vibrations in and turning.
Right. Now, here's the thing. When we get insulted by something, is that what we really think is happening? What do we actually think is happening? Where do we think the insult is coming from? We think it's coming from the other person. What is it actually coming from the other person? Sounds. Let's go through it again. So, where is the insult actually coming from? Is it?
The insult?
Where is the insult coming from? What specifically? Coming from your construct. Right? So this is the ignorance. Somebody calls you dumb. What happens is some sounds.
If you have no
And
concept of dumb, it doesn't mean anything.
Right, exactly. So who's at fault?
Wow.
Whose fault is it? Yeah. You have a construct, but now here's the ignorance. It's not that you're wrong. It's valid. But actually, if you really look at it, the thing that makes you suffer is the fact that you think that that meaning is inherent in those sounds.
I had a better sense of humor.
Yeah, or I mean, these are one of the, I think this is a little experiential maybe, but I think once you really get that, this is meaning I'm applying to something, rather than this is what is happening. It reframes it in a whole, it's a whole different thing.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So if someone says you're dumb, and then
What do you think?
and then they fail you, you get a C-, and you have to do this 5th grade one more time. So there are actual consequences to someone who says, you're dumb, and then there are consequences. Now, of course, yes, those are just it's just the sound that we conceptualize, in our mental construct. But there are actual, consequences that we feel. We suffer them, we go through them, and it actually breeds certain results.
Yeah.
That you can physically experience.
Yeah. This gets into a nuance. I mean, okay. This is a little, maybe I don't need to answer it this way, but this is how I'm thinking about it. That your constructs, they're unchanging things. Right? Construct is an unchanging thing. It's like it doesn't, when I say unchanging, it doesn't vary at all. Right? It's not like the atoms in this cup are constantly changing. Right? Your concepts about things are not like that. They're just like a boom. Alright, right? So this is an important distinction though, because when we talk about concepts in Buddhism, we say that they're not physical and they're not mental. Because what does affect change, you have a mind that is changing, which perceives an unchanging concept. And that's what affects change. Right? The concept of itself can't do anything. Because it's unchanging. I mean, what do we know? Unchanging things, are they cause or not cause? They're not cause, can they affect anything? No. So a concept, you're right, can't do anything. But your relationship to your concept, I mean, that's what we're talking about. Your relationship to that concept, oh hell yeah. That's why you suffer. That's why grasping to these concepts is real, creates your suffering. But it's not the concept itself. Exactly. Yeah.
So even if the teacher told you you were dumb, it doesn't matter whether they told you you were dumb if you actually failed class. That has nothing to do with the fact that you failed class. They're two separate things. The fact that you failed a class is because you failed a class, because you didn't know the answers to whatever test you failed, whatever. But those two things are separate.
Yeah, that's true. I think you'd say in the school, I mean, it kind of gets a little like zenny weird because, I mean, even fail is a quality, right?
But that result would have happened whether or not the teacher said you were dumb or not. These are two separate things.
Yeah, I guess you'd say that. Yeah, it's because they say that things are not causal, they're coming from your karmic seeds. So one sprouting is not necessarily, yeah, you'd say that way. I mean, what you would really say in that case, like, what does it mean to fail? Like, you put the meaning fail on these 3 marks, right? What happened? There were 3 red lines. What did it mean to you? You failed in your best person, right? So then, the emptiness then is, so what is the emptiness in this case? So we've talked about there's a construct and then there's a thing that you're including. Then what's the emptiness? What is the absence? We've been saying it. Just tell me.
Right, but the construct does not inherently apply.
Right, now which concept?
Construct.
Which construct? So all the constructs not inherently apply?
The construct that, the concept that you have of it is inherent in the thing itself.
But which one? Because some of the constructs are inherent. Being done. This is where you get to the sound ying.
Right.
That does, you can have a concept of those sounds, right? Those do exist in the words.
Which constructs are inherent?
Huh?
Which constructs are inherent?
You could say, I don't know how you do it with language, but I think the vocalization, the being as a vocalization, the dumb as a vocalization, that does apply to those sounds.
And that's a mental construct.
It's both a mental construct and definitive in the object. It's both. You have a mental construct that is true about the object.
But the mental construct that I have inherently applies to the object.
In that case, yes.
But it's not the mental construct that inherently applies to the object.
The mental, I'm not, it's
The
inherently-
object has some essence, but the construct doesn't inherently apply to it. I think that the construct is in the object, and that is always.
It depends on which
Sometimes
construct
you're correct, because the construct is in my mind.
When I say inherently applies, I mean by definition. So what we're saying is there are some mental constructs that are true by definition of the object itself. Like cup, like pen, like the sound, like the form of the sound. Those exist by definition in the object. Meanings and stuff like that do not. So that's what we mean by exist by definition. Okay.
Sorry, we have to go.
No,
I apologize.
Thank you. Okay. I think it's wrap up time. So let's just take a moment to sit quietly for a second. So bring back that original intention you had at the beginning of class. Again, this can work post facto too. So you have a reason for coming here. This has to do with a karmic path. You know, complete the karmic path, which means you had a reason for coming here. You had that intention throughout your time here. Now you want to say, after the fact, really seal the deal. May my time here go towards that goal. And that makes this complete. And say, best one is to dedicate it for enlightenment because those seeds will never stop giving their effects until you become enlightened. So it's a constant giver. Just make that clear in your mind. And towards your intention. Thank you for coming, guys. It's a pleasure to be teaching again. And we're out again.